Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I am an adrenal fatigue recovery ninja, and today I wanted to talk to you about the difference between Western and Eastern medicine when it comes time to helping your adrenal fatigue problem. From having brain fog to having no energy to get up and go, not falling asleep, not staying asleep, waking up in the morning with little energy, having anxiety, irritability, heart palpitations, standing up and getting lightheaded, crashing in the middle of the day, and just not working the way you want to work. So a lot of patients are really frustrated with the medical model, the traditional medical model, and to them I say, I understand your frustrations, but realize that there's a lot of utility to the Western medicine. And Western medicine is basically chemistry based. And so what does that mean? That means that we look at your blood chemistries. And blood chemistry is a way for us to eavesdrop in on the way your cells are communicating to each other. And we look under the microscope and we see different tissues, we see different cells, we see different organisms, we see different functions of the biology. And that's what Western medicine is. And we do a great job with acute conditions with medications like anti-inflammatories, antifungals, antibacterials, antimicrobials, pain medications. That's all based on chemistry. And when we look at the blood work and we are able to interpret how the cells are communicating to each other, we come up with a recovery strategy. And that works out pretty well. The shortcomings, however, to do with some of the outside the box approaches. So for example, when we're testing the adrenal glands, the typical medical test is an ACTH test where they give you a hormone that will stimulate your cortisol response. And if your adrenals mount a response, then you're told you don't have adrenal fatigue. Yet you could have all of the symptoms I mentioned earlier. Your circadian rhythms can be off. You may have good cortisol release in the morning, but it may be terrible for the rest of the day. Or it could be causing, you could have wrong pathway breakdown. Your metabolism is broken. And typically you could see these things on chemistry tests, but the problem is they're not ordering all these tests. So they're not looking at the relationship to the gut. They're not looking at food reactivities. They're not looking at microbials. They're not looking at the way your hormones are breaking down. So chemistry has a lot of utility, and it's very helpful if you, however, do the proper tests that you need to do. However, what I want to do is I want to talk to you about physics. Because if you remember in high school, you didn't just take chemistry and biology, you took physics also. So whereas chemistry we look under the microscope, if I'm trying to look under the microscope to see what's, what this particular magic marker is made of, it's not made up of cells, it's not made up of organelles, it's not made up of mitochondria, but there's something there, right? We remember that it's a bunch of electrons that vibrate very quickly, and really there's nothing here except microns or electrons that are going back and forth. So what I like to tell patients is physics is a branch of Eastern medicine, not Western medicine, that we look at to determine how the cells are communicating to each other, just like the chemistry on how the cells are communicating to each other. But the Western approach does not look at that. And the reason I wanted to tell you about this video today is because I have a patient, he's doing very poorly. We put him on a gut cleanse. We tried to detoxify the liver, and he's just not doing well. And he asked me, do you think this could be anything that is, something like voodoo or witchcraft or something? And he says, I know it sounds crazy. And I told him, well, think about that in terms of frequencies and wavelengths. And he says, what does that even mean? I said, think of it in terms of, in chemistry, we look under a microscope and we evaluate the cells that are in there. In physics, we know that there's frequencies and wavelengths that make up a certain property, like the colors of the rainbow. It's frequencies and wavelengths. So you can have a virus, you can have a bacteria, you can have a parasite, and all of these things have characteristic frequencies and wavelengths. In fact, viruses that differ from each other, like Epstein-Barr virus or cytomegalovirus. What is the difference? The difference is the frequency and the wavelength at which that thing is vibrating. The other thing that we need to know about is your liver, your kidney, your spleen, all your immune tissues, they have frequencies and wavelengths too. And so the cells come together and the cells form tissues, and tissues form organs, and organs form systems. And all of these have their own frequency and wavelength. So this is where we get a little weird, but it's right out of Science 101. What happens is these frequencies get disrupted by these frequencies. So for example, let's say I'm a liver tissue and I'm a cell and I have a buddy next to me and he's a liver cell too. And we're both vibrating at a certain frequency and we're hanging out and everything's cool. Then all of a sudden this new guy comes to the party and let's say it's a virus. And you and I, we're buddies and we're vibrating and we have a certain frequency that defines our liver tissue, and when we're healthy, we're detoxing, we're producing hormones, we are storing blood sugar, we're doing all the things that we're supposed to do. But then all of a sudden this uninvited guest comes to the party, it's a virus, and he has its own frequency and wavelength that's different than ours. And a lot of cancer cells are said to have no frequencies and wavelengths. So you and I are communicating to each other, and that virus has no frequency and wavelength, and we can't communicate with him, and he can't communicate with us. He becomes a disruptor. And that disruptor, what happens is we can't communicate to each other. That disruptor just mutates and it proliferates and it causes more and more of uninvited guests coming to the party. And what happens is ultimately our frequency and a wavelength starts to change because of that abundance of additional cells that are in our organ that's not working as well. It's changing its frequency and wavelength too. And then what happens ultimately is we get sick and we start spilling out enzymes and chemicals, and now we can go on the chemistry side of things and say, hey, those liver enzymes are elevated. The liver's not communicating to itself very well. But what happened before all of that was the physical changes. And that's what's really important, is evaluating someone for physical changes. And so back to the story with my patient. I talked to him and said, well, your thoughts have frequencies and wavelengths too. And so, if you're thinking good thoughts, that's a frequency and wavelength. And our cells want to be coherent. So if you had a wine glass and you started dinging it, another wine glass right beside it is going to achieve resonance. And so that's what we try to do, is we try to achieve resonance. So, the power of positive thought works on frequencies and wavelengths. I told him, hey, listen, it may sound crazy, but you have to believe that you're healthy. You have to believe that you're doing everything you can to be healthy. You have to believe that you're worthy of being healthy, because I see a lot of patients that are sick, that their frequency and wavelengths aren't working so well, their chemistry is not working so well, and then they don't feel that they're worthy of being healthy, or they feel like they're never going to be healthy, or they feel like they don't deserve to be healthy, or they don't feel like they're going to be healthy. And all of that is incongruent with the frequency and wavelength that you need to be vibrating on. So I know it's super out there today, but I really wanted to get across that both Western and Eastern medicine have a lot of value for you. We do a lot of homeopathic protocols for patients to try to understand which tissues are being affected by which pathogens, or what we call that isodes in the homeopathic world. So viruses, parasites, pollutants, chemicals, heavy metal toxicities, other things that are in the environment that have certain frequencies and wavelengths. Things that you can do to help detox are going in a sauna, and that will help spill out some of these chemical contents, and you'll sweat that out. That changes your frequency and wavelength. So to not be accepting of physics in terms of healthcare is like saying, I don't believe in gravity, and so if I jump off this building, I'm not going to hit the ground because I don't believe in it. It's a fact. When we go to high school, we study biology, chemistry, and physics. But for some reason, when we get into the health world, and medications and chemistries and pharmaceutical industries dictate how healthcare is covered, then we ignore physical sciences. So anyways, I just want to give you a little food for thought. There's a lot of things you can be doing in terms of physical work, energy work, exercise work, sauna work, sweating work. All of that stuff has a value in your recovery to your adrenal fatigue problem. So anyways, my name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I wanted to give you a presentation a little bit outside the box today. Hopefully you don't think I'm too crazy vibrating around in my liver with my buddies and then having these uninvited guests come to the party. But I hope you got a lot of value. Give me a share, a thumbs up, a like, a comment if you have anything to add to this. But my goal is really to help you recover with your adrenal fatigue nightmare. Check out my blog at adrenalfatiguesociety.com, and I look forward to helping you recover with your adrenal fatigue nightmare. Thank you so much.